I think there's a possibility to have a psychedelic experience. It's inborn. These psychedelics, very similar compounds are in our brain. And all the compounds which you find in the plant kingdom, only the psychedelics are so closely related chemically to these brain factors which we already have. We speak about the paradise of childhood. When I have the vision and a beautiful experience as a child, it is no wonder, because we have these compounds already in our brain.
In the 1940s, Dr. Albert Hofmann discovered a substance that had a profound influence on the way science viewed the human mind. D-lysergic acid diethylamide, or LSD.
I feel very indebted to Albert Hofmann for inventing LSD. After my first LSD experience, I claim that this was the greatest discovery that man had ever made. Because after all, the human mind is the most important attribute we have. And this lets us understand our mind and the enormous potential of mind. Albert told us about his youth and how he used to love to go out into the forest and feel the wonder and the beauty and the light. He actually sensed a light in the forest, and he felt exalted.
I was walking in a beautiful May morning. Suddenly, I stopped and I had the feeling everything had changed. The wood was beautiful, beautiful green, and I had the feeling that I saw now the wood as it really is. And I had the feeling I would be included by it. I had a feeling of happiness I had never had before. And this gave me the security that if you have open eyes, you may see the world in a different way. I mean, you see it as it really is. Wonderful.
1943. War rages across Europe. In the neutral confines of Switzerland, chemist Albert Hofmann is hard at work at the Sandoz Pharmaceutical Company's Basel laboratory. While searching for a cure for migraine headaches, Hofmann accidentally ingests a minute amount of an experimental substance that would change both his life and the world, LSD-25. Many would come to view it as a spiritual antidote to the atom bomb. Before the decade is over, Sandoz has sent Hofmann's discovery to researchers and psychiatrists all over the world for testing. Research projects spring up in such places as Canada, the US, England, and Czechoslovakia.
One day we got a large box full of ampules, and it was LSD. And there was an accompanying letter that said this was a very fascinating substance, discovered practically by accident, or Dr. Hofmann, the discoverer, likes to call it serendipity rather than accident.
When I discovered LSD, it was believed it was a product of laboratory. And then we discovered that these compounds had existed already for thousands of years in the plant kingdom. Not exactly LSD, but practically.
When he intoxicated himself accidentally, he discovered that this was a very, very powerful psychoactive substance, and then he confirmed it in a planned self-experiment.
being a cautious man, I started with a very, very little amount, only with a quarter of a milligram. I tested, and then I had I could say a terrible experience.
We take a long time to get used to our world when we're well, we take many years, in fact, learning about it and learning how to behave in it. And when it changes suddenly and dramatically, we may not like this.
After some hours, when I was laying in the bed, I came back. I came back for a foreign, quite foreign existence to new life. I saw, certainly, I realized how wonderful our earth is. I felt newborn, to be newborn, and even the next day, when I went in the garden, the world was new.
Just what is LSD and what does it do?
The effect is somewhat like looking through a microscope. Suddenly, when you look through a microscope, you discover that there's an invisible world around you that you hadn't known about before you did it. The same thing is true with a psychedelic drug. You're aware of processes that are going on inside your own brain. You're aware of the exchange of energies that are going on between your sense organs and the energies around them that you weren't aware of before.
Generally, you have no hallucinations with LSD. Hallucination is if you see something which does not exist. Just. But under LSD, you see things which are transformed, and comes. It is a different view, a different experience of our existence.
The very fact your senses change means that you're faced with a lot of new and quite unfamiliar problems. I mean, you suddenly become aware of the textures and colours. All these things suddenly become immensely important.
For myself, these experiences have been most strange, most awesome, and in their own way, amongst the most beautiful in my life. A sense of special significance began to invest everything. Everything was brilliantly sharp and significant. If I fixed my attention on a flower, I felt that I could spend all day in contemplating it. Phrases such as, "I've seen with the eye of the world," "the eye of the newborn and the new dead," sprang to my tongue, apparently without construction. A plain wooden chair was invested with a chairiness no chair had ever for me before.
One begins to see significance in things that you didn't see before. Many people become aware of a quite different world. Saskatchewan is a very large place, and a lot of it's empty. I spent many years in Saskatchewan, which I'm in an ambivalent way very fond. I went there as clinical director of this large mental hospital. I enjoyed those distant days in Saskatchewan.
New chemicals allow us to experience some of the unbelievably unpleasant and sometimes quite terrifying mental agonies of the schizophrenic patient. To some extent, to put ourselves in his shoes for a few hours. These people have terrible experiences. That's why they're so tense. We know that seemingly small errors made in caring for them will cause that tension to rise.
It was a bad hospital. And every time you went there, you were surrounded by people who were yelling and shouting and gesticulating and making all sorts of noise. And they were very sick, unhappy people. On the grounds at night, there was always shrieking and crying and screaming. You could hear it all over the place. Terrible place. It really was.
We found ourselves landed with this decrepit hospital and a demoralized staff. As it turned out, they were a lot better than many people believed. They were decent and humane prairie people, and they did a very good job.
Dr. Abraham Hoffer, biochemist and psychiatrist, heads our research team at the University Hospital in Saskatoon.
Abe and I met because of my interest, what became his interest in schizophrenia. He was an admirable chap to work with. He's a prairie born, and the other very important point was a lot of things that he was tremendously helpful to me, because my old predecessor would say, he said, you don't understand the Canadians of the prairies. And having got Abe as a reference point, I was able to prove many astounding refutations of this. And you could produce them on the hoof, as it were.
I've always given Humphrey credit for the immense contribution he made. He was the single most important catalyst. Had he not come to Saskatchewan when he did, I doubt I would have gone into this field at all. And my guess is that I would have become a straightforward, standard, conservative, orthodox psychiatrist.
We are able to hold our world constant. For the schizophrenic person, this constancy breaks down, or begins to break down, which is worse because of the uncertainty. We've conducted hundreds of experiments using different substances to produce schizophrenic-like symptoms in ourselves. I put myself through more than 15 experiments using everything from ololuquin to adrenalutin.
Once we began getting a little more money, we didn't get much more money, but a little more money, and the conditions really improved quite a lot.
Tommy Douglas, he was a man of tremendous vision. It made sense to him to say that schizophrenia keeps a lot of people tied up for years and years, and nobody knows what causes it, and nobody knows how to cure it, and maybe there's a better way to go about it. And so they set up a project, and I was caught in the project. It was great.
So we had everything going for us at that time. It was a series of coincidences that probably could not happen again.
By the mid-1950s, LSD research was being published in medical and academic journals all over the world. It showed potential benefits in the treatment of alcoholism, drug addiction, and other mental illnesses. Some psychiatrists and